En nombre de Dios, pues, y en nombre de este sufrido pueblo, cuyos lamentos suben hasta el cielo cada día más tumultuosos, les suplico, les ruego, les ordeno, en nombre de Dios, cese la represión.
In the name of God, and in the name of this long-suffering people, whose laments rise to heaven each day more tumultuous, I beg you, I beseech you, I order you, in the name of God, stop the repression. That's an excerpt of the final sermon of San Salvador Archbishop Oscar Arnulfo Romero, right before he was shot in the chest during Mass by members of Salvadoran death squads. This Monday, March 24th, 45 years to the day after the assassination of Monsignor Romero, social movements marched with Romero's banner in San Salvador. They presented a lawsuit of unconstitutionality to the Bukele-controlled Supreme Court against the reactivation of metallic mining in El Salvador. I'm Roman Gressier, the editor of El Faro English. It's Friday, March 28th, and you're listening to our weekly podcast, Central America in Minutes.
In Nicaragua, the house arrest of Daniel Ortega's brother
relates more to El Salvador and Honduras than to Guatemala. In the case of Guatemala,
they say globalism comes to die at CPAC, but in El Salvador, it's already dead.
Central America in Minutes on El Faro English.
Yesterday, March 27th, marked another anniversary in El Salvador. 3 years of mass human rights violations and the denial of due process and other constitutional rights under the state of exception. One of the suspended guarantees is the right to private communications. 2 weeks ago, on March 13th, Donald Trump's former top diplomat in San Salvador, Ronald Johnson, made the most direct public statement to date by a U.S. diplomat about the possible use of Pegasus by the administration of Nayib Bukele. Pegasus is Israeli-made spyware sold to governments around the world with the approval of the Israeli government. The software hacks phones, surveils usage, and surreptitiously extracts information, purportedly in the fight against organized crime. But it has left a long trail of use against dissidents, human rights activists, and journalists. The Citizen Lab and Access Now found Pegasus hacks against 36 people in El Salvador from 2020 to 2021, including 22 employees of El Faro. Attacks, which are now the subject of a California lawsuit by current and former members of El Faro. Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire, the top Democrat for foreign relations, asked Johnson pointedly whether he knew of a use of Pegasus in El Salvador against civil society or U.S. officials in the country, quote, on a massive scale.
Was not aware that they had employed Pegasus against anyone in El Salvador. I don't doubt that it could have happened, but I was not aware of it.
Ambassador Johnson said this in a hearing for the Senate to consider his nomination as top diplomat in Mexico. Johnson, a former Green Beret and CIA defense liaison, led the embassy in San Salvador from mid-2019 until Joe Biden's inauguration, just over a year before the state of exception. Bukele called him a, quote, great friend and awarded him state honors. They've remained close. Since leaving San Salvador, Johnson has become an active promoter of Bukele among Republicans. He joined a host of U.S. officials and conservatives to attend Bukele's unconstitutional inauguration of a second term last June. But even this close relationship, as Johnson would have it, was not enough for the ambassador to discard that the Bukele administration was spying on U.S. officials who routinely met with members of the opposition, civil society, and businessmen.
I was constantly emphasizing to everyone that I spoke with from President Bukele throughout his government that there must be no surveillance on anyone that works for the embassy, that we all have a responsibility to meet with opposition members, to meet with private society, to meet with business, and that doesn't imply that we support any one side more than we do the other, but it's a requirement that we have, and it's a requirement that I've taken very seriously.
For deeper reporting on Johnson's relationship with Bukele, visit our front page at elfaro.net/en. Hey, On Thursday, El Faro photojournalist Carlos Barrera won a 2025 World Press Photo Award for his coverage of the state of exception. Quote, "This project powerfully captures the personal toll of state violence, offering an intimate view into the lives of individuals who have been unfairly arrested and brutalized," wrote the jury. You can find the award-winning photography project on our website. Help us continue producing photojournalism that shines an unflinching light on Central America by joining our crowdfunding community at support.elfaro.net. We promise to keep the camera running. On Thursday morning, the Panamanian government tried to untangle itself from one of the thorniest international knots in Central America. The foreign minister announced that the government will recognize fugitive former President Ricardo Martinelli's asylum request in Nicaragua. Martinelli, who was president from 2009 to 2014, was arrested in the United States in 2017 at the request of Panama on charges of embezzlement and illegal wiretapping of political opponents and even his mistress with Pegasus. According to the New York Times, Martinelli acquired Pegasus from Israel around 2010 in exchange for votes in support of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations. Martinelli was deported in 2018 back to Panama, where a court exonerated him in the Pegasus case in 2021. He tried to revamp his career with a run for re-election to the presidency in 2024, but he was ultimately excluded due to a conviction months earlier in July 2023 on separate money laundering charges. The Supreme Tribunal of Justice upheld the ruling in February 2024, one day before the official start of campaign season. That's when Martinelli holed up in the Nicaraguan Embassy and claimed asylum. He spent 13 months there. Foreign Minister Javier Martinez Acha announced yesterday that Martinelli had been granted a letter of safe passage to leave the country, which has been surrounded by police for over a year, and to be, quote, immediately transferred to Nicaragua.
El asilo se reconoce y el salvoconducto.
His asylum is recognized and safe passage is granted for strictly humanitarian reasons, allowing ex-President Ricardo Martinelli Bukele to exercise his defense in more favorable conditions than the current ones, such as freely accessing outpatient treatment to significantly improve his quality of life.
The Panamanian government did not clarify how Martinelli will purportedly defend himself in Panama from Nicaragua, or why he could not access medical care in Panamanian custody. On social media earlier that same morning, Martinelli claimed that anti-terrorism agents had appeared at the Nicaraguan embassy. He wondered aloud whether this was an assault on the embassy or to, quote, do something to me. In his Instagram stories, he published apparent attacks on the press, including, quote, no to media terrorism in Panama. The Martinelli question is especially thorny for President José Raúl Mulino. The Biden administration sanctioned Martinelli in January 2023 by pulling his visa for corruption. Mulino held 2 posts in Martinelli's cabinet as Minister of Government and Public Security, and he campaigned as the heir to Martinelli's political program. As far as political corruption charges go, Panama can be a political refuge. Former Guatemalan President Jorge Elias Serrano, for example, took refuge there after a failed coup in 1993, in which he tried to dissolve Congress. He purportedly remains there to this day. But it is Nicaragua that continues to solidify its place as a premier hub for Central American politicians wanted for corruption. As we covered in episode 14, former Salvadoran President Mauricio Funes, a once iconic leftist leader, died in Managua in January after being convicted in absentia in El Salvador for tax fraud and illicit associations. And former Honduran narco president Juan Orlando Hernandez's arrest in February 2022 and extradition to the United States ended weeks of speculation that Juan Orlando, who to this day casts himself as a friend to Donald Trump, would seek shelter from the old Sandinista commander in Managua. Thank you for taking time from your day for Central American Minutes. I wrote today's episode with production and original soundtrack by Omnion. Be sure to subscribe wherever you do your streaming and drop us a like or a review. Our mantra at El Faro English is simple: journalism must go on. We'll be back next week. Hasta pronto.